Developed and published by IO Interactive, 007 First Light is a debut entry among the 007 franchise, and it saw a massive success with a staggering 3 million copies sold within a week of its release. As always, before we begin, please be advised there'll be spoilers ahead, so watch at your own risk. Without further ado, let's get into the lore of how James Bond earned the number 007. We begin in Iceland with James Bond as an aircrewman in training for the Navy who's sent on a retrieval mission that quickly goes south once the choppers are hit. The chopper suffers another hit by another missile before exploding. Bond wakes up after landing in the water and sees the aftermath of the crash once he surfaces. After getting past some bad guys, James attempts to make contact with home base but is unsuccessful until MI6 takes over the mission, which is supposed to involve the SAS. When asked why MI6 is getting involved, it's revealed the retrieval camp James is trying to find was compromised. The who and why part is what's to be discovered. And of course, since it's government operations, that's all that could be shared because classified. James finds and reaches the camp to find explosives that links to MI6, who are unofficially running the mission, and the explosives are post-mission cleanup measures. James successfully gets inside the camp, and to find information on this unknown terrorist group who've taken over the camp, he finds a receipt from a cafe in Berlin that was paid in cash, an MI6 briefcase with the contents inside of it destroyed because it was opened wrong, a deceased body of an MI6 senior engineer Foster, a lighter with the inscription S. Popovich, a military-grade encrypted radio, a red and white checkered patch, a torn page from the MI6 handbook about the explosive grid, a freaking rocket launcher that was part of a stolen shipment nearly a decade ago, and after listening to the hostiles talk about a massive job in Germany, it's revealed the hostiles are a Balkan gang known as Arrowhead, notorious for not leaving any witnesses behind. James enters the tent, and while walking around, he experiences some distortion and oscillation before it dissipates when he finds the crash site. He's instructed to find an OBC or onboard computer, but it's gone. While searching for it, he all of a sudden starts feeling unwell before hostiles in hazmat suits enter the tent. It's revealed that the distortion Bond heard just before was him exposed to a nerve agent and he needs an antidote for it ASAP. He rummages through the medical storage before finding the antidote, but there's two. He ejects both. He wakes up next to a body and discovers an MI6 crew member still alive until James believes other MI6 members are still alive, but his superior wants him to leave the blast zone. However, James wants to save those people, which his superior doesn't agree with, further saying that there's a less than 1% chance of success. James is down for those odds and goes rogue. He searches container B4 and finds one lot of MI6 hostages along with the detonator before heading to container G9 and finding the last lot of MI6 hostages, but he has no signal to let the boys and girls know to run as fast as they can out of camp. He heads to the central mast, loosening one of the wires, making it topple over, and while he escapes, he gets into a scuffle with the hostile when he ends his life to save the hostages. They run, but reach a cliffside which forces them to stop. Realizing he's got the detonator, he delays any conflict by threatening detonation, which he does so anyway. James enters the MI6 office to discover the MI6 handler that took over the first mission, who was revealed to be Moneypenny. He has a meeting with someone named M. This M is revealed to be a woman and the head of MI6. She speaks on the Iceland incident and wants to make him a spy for MI6. James goes through training and is sent to Malta, where he meets his instructor and mentor John Greenway. During training, he meets fellow trainees Monroe and Cressida. Monroe ends up testing James, which results in the training set getting destroyed, which Greenway isn't too happy about. After an interesting performance review, due to his issue with authority, Greenway wants Bond cut from the 00 program. But before any of that happens, M introduces James to THEIA, the world's first second-generation quantum computer. It combines a multitude of data streams instantly to come to a conclusion on what's going to happen so they can prevent said thing from happening. However, with things like this, it's very possible for the information to be inaccurate or straight up wrong. An example of this is the Iceland incident, where he was told it was a very slim chance he pulls off what he did, even though he just beat the odds. Or maybe he's just him. Bond is shown to QLab, a section of MI6 where a bunch of science stuff is going on with testing, etc. Bond meets Q and is given a Q watch. James is cleared for advanced spy training and moves into a new crib where he meets Foreign Secretary and Cressida's father, Stephen Bright, at the door. Throughout training, Bond is put on a polygraph so they can learn how to properly apply pressure during interrogation, and it is put to the test when he does a polygraph on Cressida. She passes through most of it until Monroe was mentioned.
I don't. Hey, that is not fair, Bond.
What? You fancy me? Why didn't you just say so?
Bond goes through more training, and on one evening, Greenway suggests the trio get some shut-eye and get the flag at daybreak. However, Bond decides to flip the script and take the first rule of spycraft literally, in the form of stealing the flag. Putting all his training to the test, he successfully makes it to the room where the flag is and takes it. Monroe attempts to distract the guards when it works for a little until it goes south. Bond redirects the attention to him and he meets Cressida on the boat where they pick Monroe up. Cressida invites Bond to a night out and they have a good time when they get an alert for an MI6 field test. Bond meets who he thinks is the contact, but turns out to be some random girl at the bar when the boyfriend pipes up and tries to square up with James before he dips. He finds the actual contact and is informed of a package in the men's room. And when he retrieves it, it's a tablet where he's informed of a leak within the Trade Ministry, and they've narrowed it down to 3 suspects, with Bond assigned a man named Joshua Pike. But as he leaves, the boyfriend from earlier shows up, and Bond shows him what he does to insecure men. He finds Pike and hacks his phone, but as he gets a quarter of the way through, the chick in red from earlier shows up to distract him and sabotages the mission enough for Pike to get away. He disguises as a waiter and successfully hacks his phone before joining Cressida on the balcony, where they discover Pike has a meeting in the club and devise ways to get into the meeting posing as Pike. Bond finds a bathroom to trap him in along with finding Pike and locks him in, breaking off the door handle. Bond meets with the contact and the goal of the meeting is for her to call her handler and things go well, until the girl from earlier shows up to give lip and makes the deal go south. But Bond saves it at the last second and she calls her handler. As they leave the club, Bond is stopped by the jealous boyfriend and his boys before Monroe comes in. They take care of the insecure men and head to M's office where she reveals she's suspending training to focus on something more important. A former 009 agent by the name of Reese Beckett, who's guilty of high treason, has decided to make an appearance after a decade in hiding and claims to have evidence of a conspiracy against the state and will hand over the evidence for a full pardon, but only if he could talk to John Greenway specifically. Everyone leaves until Bond is called back by M. This is where his issue with authority starts to have an impact, as due to the nightclub incidents, Greenway is reluctant to bring Bond along on the mission to finding 009. He finds Q in the dressing room and learns he's the chauffeur for the next mission. Bond heads to Moneypenny's pod to find Greenway in there talking to her about 009. Moneypenny wants to take a chance on 009 telling the truth, but Greenway doesn't believe they need anything he has to offer, adding on that he's a master manipulator. Bond and the rest of the team are briefed, and 009's location along with the meeting is to be held in Slovakia, where funnily enough, the World Chess Championship is being held. They arrive at the hotel, and while James is chilling, he notices some peculiar behavior at the bridge. James decides to check it out and sees Greenway heading to his seat, as well as the bellhop he just saw walking across. He finds the owner of the luggage that was chucked over and learns the culprit is heading over in the direction of the laundry. The door heading into the laundry though has a note. The note mentions the codes change daily due to security reasons and they're stored in the manager's office. After obtaining the new code and heading inside the laundry, he sees the strange bellhop talking to security and paying them off to make sure no one follows behind. After peacefully dealing with security and going through the door, he notices the bellhop outfit on top of a laundry bin with a note on it containing the room number 206. He finds 206, but the lock to it is broken, so he pickpockets room 205's card and gets out through the window into room 206, where it's a complete mess. Through investigating the room, he finds a suit that's been discarded, a keycard holder, and a wallet linking back to the chief of security with his cash and cards untouched. This wasn't a robbery. Bond leaves and finds the bellhop, now a chef. From pursuing the strange man, he sees the maid from before picking a lock to a room before pulling him away once they hear someone coming. After some built up tension between the two, she leaves and so does Bond to continue pursuing the strange man. After completing a puzzle, he checks in on Monroe, who has eyes on him in the cellar. Further traversing through the cellar, Monroe stops responding. But once the secret door opens, what James sees will haunt him forever.
Hang on, mate. No, breathe. Breathe. Monroe. Monroe.
After processing what happened, he tries to inform Cressida on Monroe's death, but is interrupted by the strange man. After taking care of him, Bond discovers a bomb before he's again interrupted, this time by the twin of the strange man. After fighting them for some time, Bond pulls out a sword when the twins receive an alert that makes them flee from the fight because Bond is him. He gets the fire alarm going and disarms the bomb. He looks at Monroe briefly before the second bomb that was undiscovered goes off. In the aftermath of the explosion, he finds and saves Cressida, who may potentially be a paraplegic. They spot 009 and Bond goes after him. After a car chase ensues and the maid from earlier making an appearance, they spot his car on the side of the road, but no sign of him. The mystery woman gives Bond a firearm, and after taking care of the enemies, he gets inside the plane and attaches his watch to it once he reaches the cockpit. A service is held to pay respects to Monroe and others that were lost along the way when Cressida makes her presence known and he sees her in a wheelchair. He then meets Sir Nicholas Webb, CEO of Webb Industries and top glazer of AI. He reveals he was told about what happened, and we learn he's entitled to certain information because he's the creator of THEIA. Nicholas expresses how impressed he is with the Iceland incident and wonders why he took on 1,000,000 to 1 odds chances of survival, but James refused to let anything happen to the remaining crew members of MI6. Before Nicholas departs, he gives Bond his flowers. Greenway comes in, grabbing Bond, and they head back to the MI6 office. M informs them of 009 acting on some old vendetta against MI6, and his actions have caused them to fall to their knees, putting the 00 program in jeopardy, which Foreign Secretary Bright is secretly loving, so he has a reason to shut the program down. But it's not all bad. Because of Bond's quick thinking to attach the watch to the plane, the technology from it, THEIA managed to track down 009's whereabouts. Mauritania. M wants to send them both, but Greenway still doesn't trust or have faith in Bond. However, M is running out of patience and orders Greenway to just chill out for a mission. They both oblige before M dismisses Bond when he decides to have a bit of fun with Greenway as he leaves, which Greenway doesn't exactly take too kindly.
Happy to help.
This insufferable and immature behavior I'm talking about.
Bond speaks to Moneypenny and is briefed on Charlotte Annabelle Roth, who happens to be the mystery woman from the Slovakia mission and is a senior operational officer at the DGSE, or the Directorate General for Extra Security Headquarters in Paris. Continuing the briefing, 009 took a little trip and ended up in Aleph, home of the pirate king Bavma. Bavma has a pretty dark and traumatic past though. Him and his little sister were abducted at just the age of 10. He was trained as a child soldier, and once he turned 12, he turned on his captors, taking care of a few of them before escaping and trying to find his sister for half a decade, with no luck unfortunately. Once he stopped searching for his sister, he'd end up entering the world of piracy and became a full-on businessman and forming an empire all within 2 years. But the thing with Aleph is, it's also the main black market hub on the African continent that's filled with military and private military linking with criminal organizations and rebel groups. How does it all correlate with 009 though? Well, it doesn't, which explains why he was well hidden for a decade, but new intel shows he may be part of Bavma's inner circle. Bond and Greenway arrive and get to the markets. They listen to a speech given by a man named Ali, who was putting a man named Tariq on public display to shame because he won't pay his share due to trying to take care of his daughter. Bavma is about profit over morals and integrity, so Tariq is promptly dealt with. Bond speaks to Bavma's men to get to Ali, but to be let through they need 100k and an invite. Greenway allocates Bond to source the money while he takes care of the invite. After winning a fighting tournament, closing a deal with the buyer, and stealing some crypto, Bond returns with the money and an invite, and they enter the auction. To win the auction, Bond offers 3 decades of MI6 intel as well as giving Greenway to them to deliver the intelligence. They press Ali on 009's whereabouts, but he doesn't budge until Greenway gives him a choice. If he stays with Babma, he'll go down with him and watch as MI6 turn Aleph into dust, or Ali could take the throne and MI6 would continue to turn a blind eye to everything happening. Ali negotiates and considers it if he gets box seats at the Man United game. Ali leads them in the direction of 009 and Bond comes across 009's boat that was a gift from Barmer when he first arrived in Aleph, filled with booby traps. Getting inside, they find 009's body. James notices something in his mouth and it turns out to be fake diamonds. While investigating the crime scene, they noticed 009 had eyes everywhere and was keeping a close eye on the rebooted 00 program. Bond discovers a photo of Greenway and 009 with a message on it that says "Remember this," as well as a logo on the back which is a front for the British Secret Service. Bond spots the logo on a ship in the distance, and as they head out, they're met by very welcoming guests. Bond wakes up next to a sleeping Greenway while they dangle above live alligators with a pissed off Bavma. Bond gets Greenway awake and he says one word before Bavma halts the entire operation.
Harmony.
Bavma supplies them with a car, and on the way to the wreck, it's discovered Greenway and 009 go way back to Operation Nightfall days. When THEIA first became a thing, it discovered a mole ring among the top dogs of British intelligence, which had 3 00 agents involved, one of them being 009. The other 2 were taken care of, but it didn't matter because the case got buried once 009 got away, which caused the closure of the 00 branch and Greenway to be reminded of his failure when they had him working at a desk for the last decade. After following the clues, they discovered 009's hideout and come across a briefcase. Opening it properly, they discover evidence of 009 being a target rather than a culprit until they're interrupted by Slovakian mercenaries. Taking care of them, Bond is picked up by Greenway and they get out when they're hit by an RPG. Bond wakes up to being approached by mercenaries until one of them is affected by the explosive briefcase, which gives Bond the opportunity to take care of the mercenary in front of him. After surviving off barely any ammo and a will to live, they're saved by Bavma and his men. After dropping off Greenway, Bond heads home and reads a letter from himself when he's grabbed by an intruder. After taking care of the intruder, he learns of another intruder. Taking care of the second intruder, he learns of a sniper across the way. Getting across the rooftop and inside the crane, he gets to the sniper's location and it's revealed to be one of the twins. Pursuing him, the twin gets away once he believes he's dealt with Bond. Bond discovers a gala being held by Web Industries who are celebrating 125 years and enters into a bathroom to find the assassin bin the phone, but also discovers a CCTV camera that can help locate the assassin. He gets inside the CCTV room, logging into the computer when Moneypenny spots the assassin in the basement. James makes his way down there and finds Murto, who's looking for violence. After taking care of him, he finds Murto's earpiece to discover Webb's men on the line. The man Bond met at the service is the mastermind behind it all. Before Bond can get close to Webb to hack his phone, he runs into the mystery woman from earlier who's revealed to be Isola and Damien. As Bond gets closer to Webb to hack his phone, he collapses. His drink was spiked. He wakes up to being injected with an antidote and is next to Isola along with Nicholas and Damien, who's revealed to be Nicholas's son. It's also revealed it's actually Damien who's been the mastermind the whole time. While Bond stalls Damien, he hacks his phone before Isola awakes and taking care of the guards. Bond escapes out the courtyard through the art gallery and to the loading dock when he escapes via a garbage truck. He meets with Greenway when they head to Web Industries to do some investigating when they run into Roger Finch, the Chief Legal Officer or CLO of Web Industries, before Greenway takes care of him, and after getting through a door leading to the penthouse, they spot Isola who ends up working with them. Bond finally enters the penthouse and gets the safe open, discovering documents with the code word Basilisk. As James is covering his tracks, Nicholas and Damien make an appearance, and while keeping hidden, Bond records the conversation but ends up not being enough to get him on anything. Escaping with the time limit, Bond reaches the bridge and they head into the science department. Bond grabs a lab coat to look the part and meets Greenway in the server room where a jaw-dropping discovery is made regarding THEIA.
These are all MI6 Black Ops based on confirmed THEIA data. Some of our biggest intelligence successes in the last decade, but if I'm reading this right, we were working off of false intel every single time.
THEIA makes mistakes.
THEIA makes mistakes.
And the reason we don't know about it.
It's because Webb covers it up. So it looks like every time THEIA gets her wires crossed, he dispatches Damien to fix the narrative, to alter crime scenes, plant evidence, frame or eliminate witnesses, correcting the facts to fit the data. And this has been going on all the way back
To London 2014. There was a lie right from the start. There was no mole ring. THEIA drew a false conclusion, so Webb made it true. He framed 009 and the others. They never betrayed anyone. You couldn't have known.
Shortly after, an alert goes off and Nicholas enters the room. He begins justifying THEIA's inaccuracies and says the machine has to learn even if it means people die for the sake of it. As Nicholas leaves, he activates the gas chamber while the boys escape with the missile pen. Bond reaches the flight deck and escapes Webb Industries on a chopper. As they land, Greenway's guilt from the 009 situation is eating him alive because he feels he didn't do enough to try and find the truth. At the MI6 office, Moneypenny takes Bond to a secret room within the office where M is, who isn't too happy with Bond and Greenway's actions at Webb HQ, but only because he got caught and didn't bring back any evidence, as well as the assault being labelled as terrorism. And to fix the damage, M is sending Bond on a black op to collect the evidence needed to bring down Webb. During a briefing with Moneypenny, it's revealed 2 scientists passed away under ambiguous circumstances, and THEIA connected the deaths under the MO of a hard-to-catch terrorist, Caliban. However, Interpol discovered charred remains of what appears to be linked to him, with forensics confirming his death for months, which means THEIA got the info wrong again. And to cover up the mistake, Damien is heading to Vietnam to stage a copycat killing to keep the THEIA narrative accurate that Caliban is very well alive. Bond arrives at the Pearl in Vietnam and receives Q-Tracks, which tracks an asset's location once the bug is in that bloodstream, and Q-Glasses, which records everything and sends it back to MI6. Heading to reception, he meets a woman named Teresa Lorca. Bond scans the villa guest ledger and is informed of 3 potential targets fitting the Caliban's MO. Ramon Hernandez, who's a billionaire philanthropist, Teresa Lorca, who's a geneticist, and Ellis White, who's a bit of a rockstar scientist. Bond meets the first potential target, Ramon, and gets him to consume the Q-Track before meeting the second potential target, Ellis, and getting him to do the same before meeting the third and final potential target, Teresa, adding the Q-Track to her drink while she was distracted. While Bond has some time to himself while chatting with Moneypenny, he's suddenly informed of an issue with Teresa, but when he gets there, she's fine. Later that night, James heads to a party, but when he gets there, there's another issue with Teresa. However, this time Ellis is with her, and it's also revealed the SUVs Moneypenny was tracking weren't to do with Damien, so he heads to the rooftop and finds Damien with his men and the other Murtaugh twin along with Teresa and Ellis held hostage. However, Damien isn't pleased to see Ellis because he doesn't fit the narrative of the Caliban's MO and orders his men to make him disappear. Before James gets to Teresa, he finds and saves Ellis but ends up knocking him out. Bond gets to where Teresa is and sees her with Nico, the other Murtaugh twin. After doing some damage, he takes the opportunity to get Teresa out safe before Nico wants a second round. The room explodes as Bond leaves when he wakes up tied up to a concrete slab by Damien and his men. Damien activates a machine to chop Bond in half, but Bond keeps Damien distracted and eventually sniper shots come through, taking care of some of Damien's men when the shooter is revealed to be Greenway. Bond reaches Greenway and is given an assault rifle. In the pursuit of Damien, they take a mining truck and stop once there's no more road before Greenway is shot. The adrenaline makes him think he only got nicked. Bond continues pursuing Damien, and coming face to face with him, he injects himself with a synthetic compound, which floods the endocrine system, elevating his physical and mental awareness, making him faster, better and stronger. Damaging him enough, Bond sees him about to inject himself with another synthetic compound and instead injects it in his eye when he falls onto a platform below before Bond releases metal pipes onto Damien, crushing him. That means he's gone for good, right? Bond returns to Greenway to see him pretty much on his deathbed and chats to him before he sadly passes away. Back at MI6, M informs the MI6 office that Nicholas is threatening to leak everything MI6 related close to present day if they don't meet his demands. And MI6 have already dealt enough of a blow from earlier situations like 009, so to prevent further damage and protecting the safety of the people, M gives in to Nicholas's demands along with granting him immunity, which doesn't sit well with Bond and the others. During a debriefing with Moneypenny, she takes M's side to keep her job and also disagrees with James about THEIA being compromised even after the evidence he discovered with Greenway earlier, because she scanned THEIA multiple times with results that told a different story. With James confused, Moneypenny says unless Webb has some sort of mirror computer, it's just not possible for THEIA to be compromised. Until James realizes something Damien said earlier: HYPERION. It makes sense in his mind, but Moneypenny doesn't believe tech like that exists. She follows up and wonders if James is really buying all this HYPERION talk. He pulls the what if card, but Moneypenny shoots it down and again sides with M, saying they have no choice. She further explains that even if it did exist and they had intel, doing anything to do with that would be a crime and tells James not to do anything stupid. He of course obliges, but he's bluffing, so he goes rogue to investigate this HYPERION phenomenon himself. He heads to Q Lab and finds Q. They share a drink while they talk and reminisce about Greenway before Q leaves and Bond steals field equipment before officially leaving MI6 as a rogue agent. On a boat out at sea, Bond is with Isla and they almost share an intimate moment when a Japanese submarine appears. The pair arrive in Antarctica to get inside the Research and Development Department of Webb Industries. They reach the cable car but need IDs to board it, so Bond grabs the keycards of Nora St. Vincent and David Somerset. They take the cable car and arrive in the next area when they're greeted by an android. After gathering info on Nicholas's whereabouts, the android gets suspicious of James before Isla takes care of it. They split up and after getting through robotics and into utility, he regroups with Isla. On their way to the command center, they spot Nicholas with Roger Finch. They have to upgrade their IDs though, since Nicholas upgraded security, and after taking care of security, Bond now has clearance to get into the command center. They reach the command center and discover a roadmap for overthrowing the British government and instating Stephen Bright as the next Prime Minister, a full-blown coup d'etat. When he goes to find Nicholas, he's interrupted by the appearance of Roger Finch, who calls security before Isla knocks him out with a fire extinguisher. James reaches the freight lift when he's ambushed before disabling the brakes, causing the lift to crash. After destroying the generators to allow him to access HYPERION, he descends from a giant power source and finally reaches HYPERION. However, of course, Nicholas makes an appearance and he's programmed his health monitoring device to get rid of every last bit of MI6 data the moment his heart stops beating, which leaves James in a position to be able to do literally nothing. But Isla doesn't care and comes in, injuring Nicholas anyway, before it's revealed she was always after HYPERION as well, and just used James as a means to easily get to what she needed. She steals the core of HYPERION and runs off with James, chasing behind her on a boat, until he catches up to her, getting to the submarine, when he shoots the core out of her hand before the submarine sinks, getting them both out. Locked in a cell inside MI6 along with Isla, a red alert is sounded when the cell doors open, allowing the pair to escape, only to discover MI6 is under an attack. Bond escapes and finds an MI6 staff member who doesn't know how the intruders still got in after the lockdown was engaged, and tells Bond to find a red phone to alert the others. He reaches the phone to discover M is on the other end, who tells him to grab the earpiece and find Moneypenny, who can raise the lockdown. He reaches Moneypenny's pod, but she's not there. Instead, the CCTV feed is pulled up, which is what she was reviewing, and it's discovered the hostiles are taking out the cameras and heading down towards THEIA. On his way to THEIA, M reveals how the intruders even got in. MI6's own security protocols were used against them. The hostiles faked an attack in the lobby, which triggered an auto lockdown of the lower levels and allowed another strike team to breach the facility using the tunnels in Q Lab, effectively sealing them off from the outside world. M called in a SCO-19 unit, but they won't get there in time, plus with the addition of the tunnels being a maze along with it being potentially booby-trapped, Bond is all she's got. Bond finally gets to THEIA and sees Damien survive metal pipes crushing him and is still alive. But he also has Moneypenny hostage. She grabs THEIA's call, giving it to Damien before he stabs Moneypenny. Tending to her wound, Q arrives and tells James to go and stop Damien. Bond reaches the Aston Martin Valhalla and has some explosive fun before Damien arrives and has his own explosive fun. James escapes through the tunnels before coming face to face with Damien. After damaging Damien enough, he attempts to swing, but he is still too strong and they end up falling through the tunnel onto a platform surrounded by bombs ready to flood the tunnels. After taking on Damien for the final time, Bond finally takes him down when he takes off his mask, revealing the scarring from his eye injury. Damien explodes the bombs, and after a final battle, James pushes them both off the bridge into the water. However, because of Damien's suit, Bond can't escape his hold, leaving him to just drown. Until Isla dives in and takes the call, then has a moment before deciding to go back in and get James, bringing him to the surface, saving him. Standing at Greenway's grave, M joins Bond and reveals the charges against Bond have been dropped, and also officially making him a 001 agent. But that doesn't sit right with Bond, instead opting for 007 instead, since he was the 7th recruit of the 00 program. With the main story out of the way, it's time to get into some things that happened in the story and figure out why the things that happened. Before I get into this, let's just get this out of the way. THEIA and HYPERION are not completely AI. THEIA is MI6's AI system built on a quantum computing core. HYPERION is THEIA's twin. It acts as an AI mirror that's also quantum entangled with THEIA. So both quantum computers are created by tech billionaire Sir Nicholas Webb. He created THEIA, which is a second generation quantum computer hidden deep within MI6 HQ, and the whole point of it was to gather national conflict data and provide probabilities and come to conclusions on what may happen. The may happen part is the problem. They will still act as if the information is true and accurate because you'll always take a national security threat seriously, but they would have never known that it wasn't accurate if Webb Industries was never broken into and HYPERION was never mentioned. Nicholas also created HYPERION to be untraceable and hidden practically where no one would even think to find it. But he built it in a way that makes them siblings pretty much, and the purpose of HYPERION was to spy on THEIA and gather the inaccurate information from it and make events happen to make the inaccurate information accurate. So that's why when the boys discovered the evidence at Webb Industries, Greenway is in such shock, because what they discovered is what really happened. That THEIA fed MI6 false intel, but the Webbs went to lengths to make sure the false intel was true. So even though James maybe had an issue with authority and properly listening, you probably felt Greenway was still going a bit too hard on James. While some of it was reasonable, some parts weren't, and some of it is caused by his guilt and grief from the 009 situation. And throughout the game, you could tell Greenway was really messed up by 009's actions because he really thought he was a friend, but after finding out he was allegedly part of a mole ring as stated by THEIA, he was ordered to investigate and take care of the moles. However, 009 got away, and since the others involved were terminated, the case got buried, leading to the 00 program getting shut down, which also led to Greenway working a desk job for the last decade until M came along with Bright reluctantly reinstating the 00 program. And then of course, after Greenway learned the information about 007 was false, it messed him up even more because while one side of him was already messed up from not being able to catch him originally, the other side messed him up more because he didn't even try to look further into it to see if the information they were fed was even accurate in the first place. And I believe it sets the perfect precedent and example of AI. We believe what it has to say because it's smarter than a human, so it's supposed to be correct and provide the right information, so we don't question it. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The Webb family consists of Sir Nicholas Webb, Damien Webb, and Lydia, who was the wife to Nicholas and mum to Damien, but unfortunately passed away. Sir Nicholas Webb is a ruthless tech billionaire, AI pioneer, and CEO of Webb Industries. Growing up, he was smart pretty early on and would graduate first in his class with a mathematics degree from King's College London in London, beating out 2 future Nobel laureates. After graduating and before inheriting Webb Industries, Nicholas would get into game design, programming a dystopian neon-soaked sci-fi adventure game called Hyperion 9. Once he would inherit Webb Industries later down the line, he turned it from an arms manufacturer into a global tech empire with major bases in London and Hong Kong. Damien Webb is the lethal and physically imposing son to Nicholas. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So obviously Damien, learning of his father's death, he felt some type of way about it. And a pretty common power play tactic that's used to get what you want is to strike at your opponent's weakness. Damien wanted THEIA's call, and Bond became accustomed to Moneypenny as the game went on, so Damien learned that and took her hostage to get what he wanted. Was he always going to hurt her? Yeah, probably. Damien wanted James to know what it was like to lose someone you love, and also didn't want him having all the fun. Man, it was fun diving into the lore behind this. It makes it even better there's a sequel coming, so I'm very curious to see where the story goes from here. Most likely they're going to expand on the Isla character arc and we learn who she's working for and such. I believe she's a freelancer, but we'll have to wait and see. And that's also going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed and are also looking forward to the sequel, let me know by dropping a like and subscribing if you're new for more content like this. And I will see you legends in the next one. Peace.